Hey guys, Andrew here with Xidax. Today we are doing some benchmarking videos. A lot of you guys have requested this and we think it adds a lot of value. So we are benchmarking the new 7900 XT. These are the brand new GPUs from AMD. We're gonna put it through its paces, go through some different resolutions and settings that you guys might wanna try out, so you guys have a better idea of your out-of-box experience when you're using these with these computers. Currently, this system is one of our ready to ship. So if you need some last minute gifts for Christmas or something going into the new year, these are fantastic because they are pre-built, ready to go, and we'll get them to you as fast as we can. So Julian here is playing some Call of Duty, and I'm gonna go over kind of the settings and the build. So in this computer, we have a 7900 XT with a 7700X and 32 gigabytes of DDR5. So this is an all AMD build. Right now, Julian, what's your frames per second?
At 4K, we're looking at 72 frames a second.
So this is a worst case scenario, guys, because again, when you play games like Call of Duty, typically you'll spend more time optimizing it. This is at ultra settings. This is the highest preset possible. One thing that's also right now is we're not turning FSR on, which we are gonna do in a sec. Remember, FSR is the equivalent to what DLSS is for NVIDIA. So Julian's getting a roughly 80 to maybe 100 frames, depending on what's going on. This is 4K Ultra, like I said. So really quick, Julian, if you want to turn on FSR and then tell me what the jump in performance looks like.
Alrighty.
Now, again, for you guys who don't know, without getting too technical, FSR and DLSS are upscaling technology employed by NVIDIA and AMD. This helps you get more frames by essentially either inferring or taking a high resolution image, downscaling it, and then upscaling it again to take over some of the workload that your GPU has to do. It's always going to increase your FPS no matter what game you play and what resolution you play at. It's a setting that I recommend you turn on. We do want to keep FSR at performance level simply because if you go up in quality on DLSS or FSR, you can introduce latency, and if you're playing a game like Call of Duty, that's obviously something you're going to want to avoid.
Yep, so with FSR, we're looking at about 160.
So he literally doubled his FPS by turning FSR on. Again, this is why 4K gaming now especially is something that's within the reach, I think, of way more people than it's ever been. FSR and DLSS are both great technologies, and this is something that you're gonna be able to utilize. So if you wanna have a 4K, 144 hertz plus experience in Call of Duty, this is how you get it with this machine. It's something that I think that is pretty cool, considering that it wasn't even a year or two ago when getting this much FPS on anything would have at 4K Ultra would be out of the question. And again, this is a worst case scenario, guys. When you get this home, if you want to tune your settings to competitive settings for games like Call of Duty, or you want to mess with it once you get the computer, you're going to get even better performance than what you're seeing right now. So now that you guys have seen kind of what you can expect at 4K, we're going to step this down to 1440p and show you what that looks like as well. All right, guys, so we've stepped down the resolution to 1440p. We are still at ultra settings, so I want to iterate that once again, this is a worst case scenario. One of the things that's super important to know as well is that if you are going to be playing at 1440p or 4K, you need to make sure you have a monitor to match. This guy is an MSI 4K 144 hertz. Hopefully we'll get some more up on the site, but do make sure that if you're playing at the resolution you want to, you've got a monitor that's going to be able to keep up. So Julian, what are your FPS right now?
Looking about 180 to 190.
So jumping down from 4K, still at ultra, even without any other settings, we're getting nearly 200 frames per second. So one of the things that I think that is nice is 1440p for me was the perfect resolution for a very long time. It was the right balance of performance and then basically graphical fidelity, or the way the game looks, eye candy, that kind of thing. And so there are still quite a few people who do play at 1440p, and I think it's actually becoming kind of the new competitive setting. So getting 180 to 200 frames of Call of Duty ain't bad, especially when you consider that we are at ultra. This is again like a worst case scenario. So Julian, if you want to turn on FSR, which again, remember that's AI upscaling, this is AMD's version of it, so we can kind of see what the 7900 XT is capable of pushing. And again, it's a setting that I fully believe should always be left on, especially in terms of performance, with a few exceptions. Maybe if you're playing a game like Skyrim where you care more about the game looks, you'll turn that up to quality because the latency won't really matter at that point.
So with that boost, we're looking about 220-ish.
So gained about 40 to 50 frames a second by turning on FSR. So again, pretty big performance jump, not as dramatic as 4K, and that's what we've seen with FSR and DLSS, is that as you step down the resolution, the performance difference is not going to be as significant, but it still makes a difference. 40 to 50 frames is nothing to sneeze at. And if you were having like a 1440p, let's say 244 hertz monitor or 240 hertz monitor, that's where that would make a big difference, is you actually getting more juice out of your frames. So I do think that that's absolutely something that's important to show. But yeah, 200 plus frames all day long with FSR turned on. Quality-wise, Julian, would you say, even though we're at performance, is there any difference graphically with FSR on versus FSR off?
Nothing that I can really notice. I mean, we're talking minimal.
Yeah. So that's the other thing that is important to know. Sometimes turning on FSR or DLSS, especially performance, which again, we're just trying to get as much frames per second, can cause some of the edges on some of the things to go soft, like rocks and textures and details. But quite honestly, you have to really stop and stare to notice the difference 99% of the time. In a game like Call of Duty, where you're moving so quickly and there's a lot of ballistics and explosions and things happening, you're not really going to notice. So again, I do believe that FSR and DLSS is a setting that should always be left on. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to step this boy down to 1080p, because that is still the highest played resolution for gamers on PC, and definitely the one that's streamed at. So we're going to test that next and show you guys what we can see. All right, guys, Julian now is playing at 1080p. Again, statistically, if you pull up like Steam specs, this is the most played resolution is still 1080p. It's the most common. We say a lot about 1440p and 4K. There's a lot of branding and marketing around pushing that higher resolution. And as someone who plays 4K and 1440p, I have to say it is a whole other level of experience. But realistically, this is, I think, what most people want, and especially for competitive gamers who are trying to squeeze every frame they can to get an edge over somebody else. This is kind of the experience that they're looking for. So Julian, at Ultra, again, remember, worst case scenario, 1080p, what are we getting on the game right now?
We're at 114, 120.
120, so it dropped down. Interesting. Now, that could be, honestly, again, for 7900 XT, it's brand new. There's some driver stuff going on. When we tested this during our live stream, we were getting like 240, 250 FPS. So again, know that that's not necessarily going to be consistent with your results. You should be getting much higher. So again, even though we are recording this and showing you, that has been what we've seen, is we've seen much higher FPS at 1080p. We are getting like 250 frames a second. That's more what I would expect at this resolution, and probably comes down to the drivers, or Call of Duty. Could be both, as we all know that sometimes the game isn't the best when it comes to actually supporting new updates. So just know that that's not the experience I would expect for you. If you want to turn on FSR though, we can see if that's going to make a dramatic difference. Yeah, when we were doing our stream live, we were getting about 240, 250 frames a second at 1080p. So my guess is that there's some setting somewhere or something that's happened that's causing us to have that drop frame.
So we just jumped to 180, 160.
180, 160.
We are in a pretty heavy scene right now.
Cool. So guys, we're getting about 200 frames a second with FSR turned on. Again, like I said, this is worst case scenario. At 1080p, at least when we were doing our live stream, we were getting easily 240, 200 frames per second. That's something that I want to talk about just for a second. One thing that's hard when we do these benchmark videos is that some people will watch a video and think they're going to get what exactly it is. With computers, there's always going to be a little bit of variance for a number of reasons. Driver updates can be one of the biggest reasons, and so just know that, especially with newer tech like this, you want to keep your drivers up to date, so that way you're getting the best possible experience you can no matter what game you're playing. And I fully expect that these kinks will be worked out, in the coming months, so it's not something I'm particularly worried about. Remember that these 7900 XT systems are ready to go, so if you need a last minute Christmas gift, if you need high performance, whether that's 4K, 1440p, or 1080p, if you want something that's going to last you a long time, whatever the case may be, these are excellent computers and I fully recommend them to you. And you can talk to a sales guy like me. My name again is Andrew. Julian here likes to say he's the manager. We think otherwise, but he can help you out too. Any of us on the sales team would be happy to talk to you. If you don't want this system, but you do want a system from Xidax, we can talk about our wonderful warranty and support, any of the options that we have available to you guys. We're completely custom. We can go up, we can go down. But again, as far as showcasing this system, it is an incredibly powerful build that's capable of doing anything at modern settings, regardless of the resolution and settings you play at. And regardless of that, we had a little bit of a snafu when it came to doing it at 1080p. I think that the results honestly speak for themselves. Anyway, guys, make sure you subscribe to all of our social media, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. You can find us across all of that. Jump in the cells, talk with one of us, and we'll be happy to help you get a computer for Christmas or for any reason. And we hope to see all of you next time here.